At home, it was over a number of years. I remember being, upstairs in my room, in bed, crying myself to sleep under my covers, hearing shouts, hearing screams, hearing things smash. And I didn't know if my mum was okay when I could hear all of this stuff going on downstairs, when I could hear those shouts and those screams, when I went downstairs the following morning and saw broken glasses, or saw our Hoover kicked in once. And, there was it was hard. It was really hard at home. And, I was hit a lot at home by the perpetrator as well. And it was like, treading on eggshells. Trying to make sure that through the way that you acted, or through your inaction, or through a look that you gave, or particular words that you used, didn't rock the boat, that weren't misinterpreted. And so that made me really hypervigilant from a super young age. And that is what domestic abuse is. It's when other people's behaviour in that way is so coercive, that it erodes at your very personhood. Too many people experience that today, and I've experienced it myself, and so has my family. I definitely knew that it wasn't right. It wasn't what a child should experience. It wasn't what any family should experience, but that was our reality for some time. And I should say, it wasn't the case that every single day there was awful trauma, but that time was really, for me, defined in so many ways by those key moments, and by that environment that felt hostile, that felt constricting, and felt as though it clipped our wings at home.
When you look back now, how do you feel about that little boy that was getting through that?
I feel really sad for him. He was such a good lad. I was known as a smiley kid at school. You look at all my school photos, biggest smile you could imagine. And I was just trying my best, and I was, finding my way in the world. And it's sad that kid, me, was subject to what I was, and that my mum was subject to what she was as well. She deserved way better. But I look back and I feel really proud of the resilience of that kid. Over the weekend, I was going through some old boxes, and I found a diary from that time. And there was, huge innocence in that diary, in that childhood of, I was a massive Star Wars fan, still am to an extent, and there were lots of, Star Wars, drawings and all that kind of stuff in there. But then I came across, an entry that I'd written to myself back at that time, describing what, I was going through, what I was feeling at that time, and feeling as though I was going to get hurt if I didn't act in the right way. And it really struck me, seeing, the pencil that was written in, and literally having not read it since, probably, I wrote it that day. So I feel sad, but I feel proud of how resilient that little kid was. My mum was, and proud that we've got through it. And an abuser takes away your dignity, as he did in that case for me. An abuser takes away your sense of self-worth, and an abuser makes you feel anxious about even the smallest things, like going to the toilet. And no child should ever have to experience that. And part of the reason I'm campaigning is because I want to make sure that no kid has to go through what I've had to go through.
Did you tell anyone at the time about any of this?
No.
Why not?
I was scared. Obviously, my mum was at home, and she knew some of the things that were going on, but there are other things that she did not know were going on. And so I was scared, what would happen if I shared, beyond. This was a violent person who I had seen and heard be violent at home. So that there was just no way I was going to cross that line. And to be honest, I had committed for very many years after that I would never speak about this. But through having some great friends, through accessing therapy in adulthood and the rest, found it much easier to engage with some of this stuff, to reckon with it, to come to terms with it, to accept that these experiences, whether I've liked them or not, and I did not like them, have shaped me, and to take that and see what I can do with that. And a key mission of mine has been to fight for those victims and survivors across the country, those who have maybe got out of the situations that they're in but still require support, but also those many people who are still in those situations or who might find themselves in them in the future. You often cannot see this kind of abuse coming.
And what is it that you want from the government?
Well, a key thing I want from the government is proper recognition of domestic abuse crimes in the law. And there's a real problem where we saw the government enact its STS 40 early release scheme, which saw lots of ex-offenders released 40% into their sentence rather than 50% into their sentence. And what the government promised there is that they would exclude domestic abusers from being released early under this scheme. And I think that's so important. It's so important because victims and survivors of abuse need to prepare for when their abuser is back on the streets. And there are many victims and survivors who decide that they might need to move house or move their kids to a new school, shop in different places. All of these kind of things are so important. And so that's why that commitment the government made was so important. But what I learned, what the country learned, what victims and survivors learned, is that actually those domestic abusers, they were being released early anyway under this scheme. They were slipping through the net. And the reason is because the government has no formal way to categorise domestic abusers currently. It doesn't know how many domestic abusers are in prison at this present moment. I asked them that question head on. They said, word for word almost, it is currently not possible to robustly calculate the number of domestic abusers in prison. Once we have this specific categorisation, the exclusion could take place from an early release scheme if a government so wished, but also we would know how many domestic abusers there are in prison, etc., etc.
Have you had any assurances on this from the government, publicly or privately?
Well, the promising news is that after months and months of campaigning for this specific categorisation, working alongside incredible organisations like Women's Aid, like Refuge, like Victim Support, Mankind, working with survivors and victims, working with academics, lawyers, the government has said that yes, as a result of that campaign, we're going to introduce a specific categorisation.
So they've said they're going to do it?
They've said they're going to do it. Not a specific offence, but instead, when someone is sentenced for a particular crime, ABH, say, that there will be a categorisation that happens there. But the assurance that I need from the government, that I so far have not got in the House of Commons, is that a government, one, could in theory use that to exclude domestic abusers from an early release scheme, and two, that this government will use that identifier to exclude them from early release. That is what I'm pushing for now. That is the commitment that I need to see, and that's the commitment that victims and survivors across our country deserve.